this intensive retreat, workshop, seminar series. My name is James Groccia. I am your presenter this morning. Welcome. Appreciate you coming. Now, this is a challenge, saying the same things 4 times in a row. I hope I can make it as interesting today as I think it was yesterday, the day before, and the day before that. So my challenge is to be enthusiastic and energetic and knowledgeable, and hopefully, yesterday only 2 or 3 people fell asleep. Today, I'll try to at least minimize that. Maybe no more than 5 people fall asleep. That's my goal for today. I have a question before I start, before we get into this. Just kind of a question to get you thinking. What process do you use currently when you're designing a course? Any thoughts? Have you thought about what you do? How do you go about it? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I think about the level of student.
Okay, you think about the level of student.
Then the outcome of the course. What want my student to learn out of this course?
What are the objects, the outcomes of the course?
Then the background of the student.
The backgrounds of the students.
Then what is the feedback of this course?
Okay, then you check the feedback when the course was taught previously. Excellent, wonderful. How else would you go about starting to design and put a course together? Yes, ma'am. One request. I am deaf in this ear, so please speak loudly. I usually have no problem hearing women speak. It's the men that, but unfortunately you're on my deaf side, so speak loud.
I think the first thing before designing any course, you have to see or have to see the vision and mission of our institution and our college. Then we have to design the course, our course, fit to the mission and vision to that.
Okay, wonderful. So you're even going in a kind of a more general step up beyond what your colleague has said. In addition to what your goals are for the course, what are the goals or the vision for the institution? What is the mission of the institution? This is a question that my institution back in America has been asking. I work at Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama.
Also depends on the program of the DOs.
And the question we've been asking is, what does it mean to be an Auburn graduate? Can you identify some kind of ground foundational characteristics of someone graduates from Auburn University, regardless of discipline? They could be in veterinary medicine or human medicine or English or psychology. Are there some characteristics, some knowledge, some values that an Auburn graduate has?
Prerequisite course or master course. Also look at this side. If it is prerequisite or master course.
Okay, so it comes to different levels. Yes, sir.
I'm Sir Dr. Arif from the College of Medicine. I think he should be good at course design.
So he's looking for extra credit over here. He's learned. He's through many, many years. What does the professor want me to say? And I'll say, excellent.
All guesswork.
Yes, thank you. I have a kind of a second order question. You all are, this is fantastic. You're in tune with what I want to say. The next question is, how many opportunities do you get to design a course?
Once a course?
Each time you teach it?
No.
No?
One time for a course.
Okay. you get one opportunity when you're designing that class.
Yeah.
All right, but I guess my question is, do you get the opportunity to design classes, or are they just given to you?
Sometimes. If it's a new college, they'll let you design the course. But if somebody has already been teaching the course, then you just follow what has been established.
Okay, so you sound like a good psychologist. I'm a psychologist. The good psychological answer to every question is, it depends. So you're saying, well, it depends. Sometimes if it's a new course or a new institution, we get to start. But I think what I've heard over the last 3 days is that a lot of mandatory courses are already designed for us. They're given, the learning objectives are given to us. The course content is given to us. And so in some cases, you don't have the flexibility, the latitude to design a class. But in other situations, maybe if it's an elective class, if it's not a compulsory course, you have a little bit more flexibility. So my goal for today is to give you some information about course design that maybe you may not be able to use immediately. But these principles are available. What you'll hear today, what we'll learn today, I want you to kind of file in your memory bank, so when you do get the opportunity to design a course, you can implement what I call these comprehensive course design principles. Okay? That's where we're starting from. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you're just waiting. These are my goals. I call these instructional goals. These are the things I want to cover today. I'm going to make a difference, and there's a big difference when we're designing a course between instructional objectives and student learning outcomes. So the instructional objectives are what I want to accomplish as a teacher. Student learning outcomes are what I want students to accomplish as a result of my teaching. Okay, there's a distinction here. So I'm going to go over general course design. I'm going to talk about comprehensive course design. I'm going to hit each of these points. We'll come back at them later. And then here are, and these are in your packet, these are my desired student learning outcomes. This is what I'm hoping that you are going to be able to do as a result of this workshop. At the end of the workshop, we'll come back and revisit these and see how well we did. Okay? All right, who am I? Who is this mystery person who speaks fast and walks around the room and will do strange things to you under the guise of education? My name is James Edward Groccia. My parents were from Italy. English was not my first language. Italian was my first language. Unfortunately, I can't speak Italian now. I am Professor Emeritus at Auburn University. I spent a number of years as Assistant Dean of the Graduate School. I was Director of our Center for Teaching and Learning, and then just a professor in the College of Education. My educational training is counseling and educational psychology. I spent 15 years as a practicing counseling clinical psychologist. I'm not licensed in Saudi Arabia, so if you have a problem, keep it to yourself. Then, for the last 15 or 20 years, I spent as an educational psychologist teaching. My teaching was only the last 5 or 6 years, I only taught postgraduate PhD students. I developed a university certificate, a graduate certificate in university teaching. 4 courses, 12 credits. Students would get a PhD in biology, or a PhD in English, or a PhD in computer science, and if they wanted to add another credential, they could get this certificate in university teaching. Because as we probably know, we are trained in our graduate programs to be expert in our discipline, not necessarily in how to communicate that discipline to others. So some universities in the U.S. have recognized the need to supplement PhD, master's education with this additional training in how to teach university students. So I developed a whole system to do that and coordinated that program before I officially retired, which means I do the same thing for about a third of the pay. I'm currently a visiting professor at the University of Tartu in Estonia, and I go there once or twice a year and teach a 5-week course similar to what I teach, or what I used to teach at Auburn. The university, I teach a postgraduate course called Learning and Teaching in Higher Education to International Graduate Students. All PhD students, about 20 of them every year. It's 5 weeks. I do 2 weeks online before I get there, 3 weeks face-to-face, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. Very intensive program. It would be wonderful if somehow someone at this institution would think, hey, maybe we should create a program like that to prepare our academic staff and our PhD students to become excellent teachers before they go out and practice on our students. I was a Fulbright scholar at that same institution years ago, and I'm former president of the Professional and Organizational Development Network in Higher Education, which is the world's largest organization focusing on improving university teaching. I've written, edited, published about 12 or 13 books on higher education. So that's me. That's where I am coming from. Auburn University. Where is Auburn University, you might ask? Well, it's in the deep south of America. You see the arrow point? If you continue about 60 kilometers on that path of that arrow, you will hit Atlanta. Some of you know Atlanta. Atlanta actually is the world's busiest airport. More people fly in and out of Atlanta per year than any place in the world. Hard to believe. Anyone been to Auburn, Alabama? Anyone been to Alabama? Oh, I hope you don't say it all the time. Great. All right. Here's a very general plan to design a course. The first step is to gather information. I'm going to give you a more specific plan in a minute. So gather information. What kind of information would you, I'm going to move around, so. What kind of information would you like to gather when you're designing a course? Yes?
Well, apart from what my colleagues already said, your college and university mission and your learning objectives, I also go and check other successful courses run by other universities, see what they're teaching and how it fits into my curriculum or my course, my syllabus.
Okay, you would be amazed at how many course syllabi are on the web. As a matter of fact, some institutions like MIT, you could go to MIT's website and find pretty much every course that they teach is all loaded into the computer. So one of the things, you sit down at your desk, you open up your computer and you start investigating. I was going to say spying, but I don't want to say. You start investigating on what other people are using to teach that class. Great. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I look what are the students I'm going to teach, and I see what the market needs, and I design the course according to the output I need.
Okay, excellent. I look at who my students are, what they need, but I also see what their employers are looking for, what the market is wanting, what skills, abilities, interests, values are out there, and can I tailor my course, design my course to try to meet those needs better. Excellent.
Also level of the student background.
Speak louder.
The level of the student.
I try to figure, I get information about the level of student. Okay, I'm planning this course. I'm trying to get stuff. What other stuff?
Course materials. Course materials.
What kind of course materials?
Textbooks.
Ah, textbooks, articles. So the resources I'm going to use to build my content. Yes?
Any constraints or standards for the current organization that I have developed?
Okay, I'm going to see what kind of constraints, requirements, organizations. Let's say I'm teaching an engineering class. What are the ABET requirements for a course like this? All right. Yes, sir?
The background of the student, the courses that we have studied before that could support this.
Okay. I'm going to try to get an idea of who my students are that I'm going to teach before I teach them. Do we have access to that all the time, or are we just...
Sure.
We know who are going to take our classes?
Yes.
I think that's true sometimes, but I don't think it's true other times. I think you get whoever shows up, and then you figure out who they are. You know, we don't always know who our next group of students are going to be. We might know their names, but we really don't know what their background is. So that's something, we'll come back to that later. Yes, sir?
Accreditation requirements.
Accreditation requirements. So again, I put this all out and I start gathering material. And I start putting my course together. I design my class based upon all this material. Then I teach it. I revise it, I get feedback, I get student evaluations, I might get peer review, I get a colleague come in. You know, you're all familiar with this concept of peer review, right?
Yeah.
Has anyone here ever thought of, you write an article, you send it to a journal, the journal gets it, sends it out to 3, 4, 5 other people, they give you comments, you make adjustments, you rewrite it, they say revise and resubmit, or they say find another journal, but you get some feedback on that. Has anyone ever thought of doing that with their syllabus? You develop a syllabus, you send it out to 4 or 5 colleagues at different universities who teach similar courses, and you say, can you give me some feedback on my syllabus? Am I teaching the right stuff? Is it organized well? Am I using the right instructional techniques? Am I assessing the knowledge correctly? Wouldn't that be an interesting thing?
I participate in writing book, English for Workplace in Sudan. I write about 3 units in...
Okay, so you do fantastic, great. Yes, sir?
We have different practice. For example, in my college, we have expert group.
Say again?
We have expert group, and the expert group will design the course, and they have to do the syllabus. They have to review each other, and when they finish, they have to send it to the whole department. The whole department, they can see it. If they have any comments,
Great.
They will give you that feedback.
Okay, so some courses are not just designed by an individual, they're designed by a curriculum committee or an expert group. And so they're getting feedback from each other, they're kind of reviewing what one person has. That's good. I think that happens maybe more in these required classes and required curriculum. So yes, excellent. I'm going to introduce to you and develop a little bit, not great detail, a little caveat. You know what a caveat is? It's like a nice excuse. I have taught this kind of workshop on course design over 5 days. So this is 5 days worth of material we're condensing into 3.5 hours. So I'm just scratching the surface. I'm going real fast. I'm introducing a lot of topics. We're having breadth instead of depth during this workshop. So I'd like to introduce the concept of backwards course design. Can I have a show of hands? Who is familiar with what that term means? Excellent, excellent. It's simply, as this says, the process in course design, you start from the end and you work forward. You know this, but you probably just don't know that I'm familiar with the term. So you design a course from the perspective of what you want students to learn, not necessarily what you want to cover. So the driving force of course design is student learning outcomes. Not your interest, not your abilities, but rather student learning outcomes. So here's another way of looking at backwards course design. You start with student learning outcomes, what students will learn. Then you develop your assessments. How am I going to measure whether they have attained that learning outcome? Then I build in content and assignments. What do I want to cover? How am I going to assign and break that down into tasks, to homework, to tests? And then I develop my instruction. So the instruction comes after one understands what the learning outcomes are and what the content is in the assessments. So you design it backwards, but you deliver it forwards. All right. I've been talking for about 20 minutes. I have a strange technique based upon empirical research on the memory's ability to focus attention. You know what I'm going to say right now? Anyone know?
Break.
Excuse me?
We'll give a break.
Yeah! The brain can kind of maintain focused attention for 15 or 20, 25 minutes at the most. After that, we have to do something. You're not going to get a break. I'm sorry, you're not leaving. But I'm going to ask you to stand up. Everyone stand up, please. Stand up. If you're next to someone that you don't know, introduce yourself, say hello. I want to hear some talking. Tell them what you teach. Okay. Find your neighbor. Your neighbor. All right, wonderful. Have a seat. Siéntense, por favor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now just look around. Everyone's smiling. I don't believe it. This is a workshop and you're smiling. You're not supposed to be smiling.
A revolution.
This is like medicine. Medicine is supposed to hurt for it to be good, right? Education, you can have fun and learn at the same time. Believe it or not. So, and I'm going to do this every 15, 20 minutes. As I said, I have studied and researched human learning and effective teaching for 35 years. One of the basic laws of learning, you won't see this in any textbooks, I invented this myself, is that the mind can absorb what the rear end can endure. Okay? So you have to be active. There's fatigue. The physical fatigue, mental fatigue, emotional fatigue hinders learning. So, here's my 12-step process. This is in your handout of comprehensive course design. We're going to kind of walk our way through these 12 steps today. First step, determine course goals. Second step, student learning outcome. Content and assignments, they can be switched. Assignments and assessments can be 3, and content can be 4. There's no great rule of law that says one has to be in front of the other. Then you determine how you're going to teach it, your instructional methods. You factor in then your consideration of who your students are, what their prior knowledge is, what level of the course. You consider yourself. We're going to talk a little bit about self-reflection, self-analysis. Remember, I'm a psychologist. I'm going to get a chance to hypnotize you all. But I'm going to get you to think about who you are, who you have been as a learner, and how that affects who you are as a teacher. Critical question for us. Then we're going to talk about the context. Context, I mean the classroom, the institution, the department, the culture, the country, whatever. Then, finally, the last step in this design process is developing the syllabus. I want you to think about the syllabus as the abstract of your course. And if you've written a journal article, what's the last thing you write? The abstract. The abstract, now you know what to say. Well, that's what the syllabus is. The syllabus is kind of your abstract of the course. Then you teach it, you get feedback. We'll talk a little bit more about feedback here. Feedback is critical to learning. Then you revise it based on that feedback. You teach it again. You go through that cycle. And then maybe 3 or 4 years later, you decide, well, I got to start over. And you go through this whole process again. So that's in a kind of a thumbnail, nutshell view of course design. Any questions so far? If you have a question, don't feel afraid to raise your hand. I will ignore you equally. I will call upon you equally. No questions? We're all in sync here? Oh, yes, ma'am.
So, what I understand is it takes 3 to 4 years for me, for example, to be confident that this course.
Okay, so the question is, am I correct in saying it takes some time, 3 or 4 years, for me to really feel confident in this class? Unfortunately, just about the time you feel confident is about the time you should revise the class. Because things change. I've been teaching almost 40 years. Well, it probably has been 40 years. 1979, it's 40 years, right? Anyway, I have taught many classes. I have never taught the same class the same way twice in a row. I can't do it. It's boring for me. I look at the feedback. Sometimes students think this part needs to be fine-tuned, so I fine-tune it. I teach it next year, and they want it to go back to the way it was before I fine-tuned it. So teaching is dynamic. It's not a static thing. We talk about, you've heard the term the hard sciences and the soft sciences. Math, physics, engineering, those are the hard sciences. And psychology and education and human development and sociology, those are the soft sciences. I think that's wrong. I think the hard sciences are the hard sciences, And the soft sciences are the even harder sciences because you're dealing with humans. You're dealing with people. And kind of the laws of science, that determine what's a correct mathematical formula don't hold when you're trying to figure out people. So,
1 does not equal 2.
yeah, 1 does not equal 2 when you're dealing with humans.